Welcome to my lecture about this current state of knowledge of microlichens in Brazil. I will try to give mostly details that I didn't give at the special lecture already earlier this week, and concentrate on the current state really, and not on the whole Brazil lichen flora. I give this lecture also on behalf of Marcela Cáceres, with whom I made many of the work. It will have three parts: history, current state of knowledge, and future challenges. On the history, I give only little information. Mostly this. The 3 centuries that microlichen research has been done were different. In the first 200 something years ago, only a very few areas were sampled, but some were quite exhaustively sampled actually by Vainio or Malmo. In the 20th century, most of the work was actually done on microlichens, and mostly in the south, also cladonias everywhere. Mainly Kalb was the main collector and his students, and he used his material. And furthermore, folliculus lichens have been collected by lots of people, including non-lichenologists. In this century, Marcela started with the microlichen survey in the northeast. And in the last 10 years, this intensified and spread over all of Brazil. First, all kind of Amazon states, then a bit down, and now we are researching the microlichens also in the south of Brazil. So far, we found already about 500 new species for Brazil, including 200 undescribed before. Well, this shows, for instance, the areas where Malmo collected, and Schiefner and Pigwari, but you can also see that lots of states were simply not investigated at all. And this is the north. The collections of Kalb, the places where he went, are not included, but it was mostly Sao Paulo, Mato Grosso do Sul, and Mato Grosso. States like Acre, Roraima, Amapá, Tocantins, Goiás, almost no collections so far until 2012. This picture, I showed it before, but this picture gives the situation of the state of the knowledge of cladonia in the year 2000. And cladonia has been collected also a lot by non-specialists. So some of them are very big. And it rightly shows that cladonias are more speciose in these coastal mountains in the southeast as compared to the rest of the country. But if you look carefully, there are a lot of white areas. I mean, 70–80% of the area of Brazil is white. And that's an artifact, because this shows that nobody actually went there and collected any lichen. Because if you go somewhere, you always find cladonias. Sometimes only a few, but there are corticulus cladonias everywhere. Something like Cladonia subradiata. This is another way of showing the same distribution, but it's actually a real situation. This is heterodermia species. So the situation that the southeast is really more speciose is right for most of the microlichen groups. So for Parmentrima, for heterodermia, for cladonia. This is based on recent data. And these are the places we collected in the last 10 years. So about 20 states, so almost everywhere, but not really everywhere. And of course, if you go to one place in the whole of the Amazonas state, it's not really representative. Still, we found a lot of different things, a lot of new things. And if you compare the two bars here, the upper bar is from the situation in 2000. And you see that there are bars that had very few species, and now there's at least a few hundred after one visit of, let's say, a week. But also the high bars, look at MT stands for Mato Grosso. Also that one went up with several hundreds, and Mato Grosso do Sul exploded really. So it's not only the places where there was no research done so far. And this is the situation, the current situation, based on accepted or at least more or less accepted species. There are still states with few records like Goiás and Distrito Federal and Piauí, which are clearly because no recent excursions have been made there. So there's only the old handful of records. But most of the other places have been visited, and it still shows that the southern half and southeast is richer in species than the north. I really think that is true, although of course the Amazonas and places like that, if you go to many places in Amazonas, it might well be that there are so many undescribed things or unfound things yet that in the end it will surpass some of the southern regions. Okay, so the recent progress comes from three types of things: collecting in new areas, returning to areas where there was previous work. And one of the things we do there is trying to find topotypes so that the species can be sequenced and can be restudied. And I mean, often the real types are in Europe and they're not kept here, even without duplicates. And also detailed study of some species complexes yields new species. And I'll give a few examples here. It's a recent collecting in new areas. So Acre, there were 13 known until it was visited by us. And then we found, now it's 298. And I don't know how many new to Brazil, but 3 of the new species still has to be described. This is a recent excursion. Amapá, from 13 to 237, and 16 new to Brazil. That's normal. We usually get dozens new to Brazil and a dozen new species. Mato Grosso do Sul. Of course, Mato Grosso do Sul is the place where the Congress was going to be held, and in the past years, a lot of research has been done here, and we did the 166 is the situation in 2000, and now we have 831 species, and 40 have been described in the past years. Quite a lot, really, and kind of all kinds of different groups, all kinds of unexpected things. This is central Brazil, a place that was visited by Malme, but only part of it. Paraná, we went to the coastal area, and so far there was only work done in the upland area, and the number of species doubled. And this is an example of one of the new species. It's a Synartotelium, and it has the stromata UV plus yellow. And this is another really unexpected one. It's a Mesediotaceum, this green algae and not Tentopolioid. And it was found, I mean, it was really unexpected to find this. The car broke down and we had to wait, and we found this on the tree more or less along the road. Returning to known areas also gets a lot of new species. Like here, Malme's collecting area, well, 1 real new species, but 100 new state records. And Malme's collecting area in Mato Grosso, 200 new state records. Duque Reserve, we went there. That's the place in Amazonas where we went because it has easy access. You can get permits and there are trails and everything. And so the second time we went to the Amazonas, we went back to the same place. First time we had 175 species, including several new, and now 123 extra species. I mean, this is a place we visited, and we actually didn't really go to new trails, but we looked at other things. We looked more at fallen branches, fallen trees, things like that. 50 species of them new to the Amazonas. Caraça. Now, Caraça is a place that is the main collecting area of Vineo, and it's known as the hotspot for cladonia in the world. It has 70 species of cladonia in a radius of 3 kilometers. You can walk to all these things. And it has been visited, of course, for more than a month by Vineo in 18 something. And then there was an international excursion, and there were local excursions, and well, people like Marcelli went there several times. Klaus Kalpe collected and described things from there. But still, even intended that this is a recent excursion and we're still working on the material, we saw already 60 cladonias, including several which were new to the area. About 7, 8 new to the area, including some of the species that were just recently described, saxoculus species with lichen. And we saw in the field 2 heterodermias that had never been reported or found there, as far as we know, Cercinales and Vulgaris. I mean, clear species, there's no doubt about it. And even Trapeliopsis tudere, which was described from Alagoas, 1350 kilometers to the northeast from there, and totally unexpected, because it's such a strange species. It's the only fruticose species in the order. This is the cladonia. The cladonia has small scramules. It's all over Caraça, and it even forms epithecium. It was described without epithecium. And this is another species newly described. This is the one newly described species from the Malmö area in Rio Grande do Sul. It's a Lichenology. It's a kind of black cordioid, umbilicate, almost umbilicate Lichenology. Some examples of detailed species complex studies. Well, Neoprotopomelia, we always thought there were 3. We called them Isidiata, Capitata, and Multifera. Suridiid one, Isidiid one, Apticium one. And now the Isidiata turned out to be a Brazil Isidiata, so it's different from the original one that we described. And well, there are many more species, and differences are not only in phylogeny, but also in things like ascospore number, 16, 32, 64 per ascus. 4 new tephromelas, 3 of which with Lichen. So far there was only 1 other species known with Lichen. Endless new Gravidaceae, and even, well, it's not a macrolichen, but even in heterodermia there are new species. These are 2 of the tephromelas that are new. Both have Lichen. And these are the heterodermia, some of the heterodermias. One of them, in D, for instance, you see it has the black line on the lower surface along the margin. Well, what is still to do? A lot. My idea is that about half of the species are still undiscovered. And in the end, Brazil is the biggest tropical country, so it may have the highest number of species